My dear, I can't allow this girl to scatter everything we have planned from the beginning. Aaliyah needs to go. She needs to sleep forever.
That was the night Aaliyah stopped believing that blood meant love. She did not scream. She did not rush into the room. She simply stood in the dark hallway of the Abuja mansion, frozen, listening to the voices of the people she had called family all her life. "We should have ended this long ago," her mother said calmly from inside the study. Aaliyah felt her heart stutter. She had only come downstairs to get water. Just water. She was not meant to hear anything. But her legs refused to move as her mother's voice continued. "If she remains alive, everything stays in her name," Uncle Victor replied. Her hands began to shake. Then Ethan spoke, her younger brother, his voice uncertain, almost trembling. "Are you sure this is the only way?" "There is no other way," Mrs. Williams answered firmly. "I planned everything from the beginning. I will not let it fail now." "From the beginning?" Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. Fear crawled slowly up her spine. The woman inside that room was the same woman who had raised her. The same siblings she ate with every day were now discussing her death as if it were a business decision. Something inside her shattered. She stepped back quietly, then turned and ran, barefoot, confused, terrified. She ran out of the mansion without knowing where she was going. The Abuja night air felt cold against her skin, but her thoughts were louder than the silence. Why would her family want her gone? What had she done? Only hours earlier, she had still believed she belonged there. Everything had changed after her father died. Before his death, the Williams mansion had always felt safe. Her father was a respected businessman in Abuja, known for discipline, integrity, and fairness. At home, he was calm and protective, especially toward Aaliyah. He often said she reminded him of himself, quiet, thoughtful, observant. Her mother, Mrs. Williams, had always been distant. Aaliyah accepted it as personality. Some mothers were warm, others were strict. She never questioned it deeply. Her younger siblings, Ethan and Sonia, were closer to their mother. Aaliyah thought that was normal. At least, that was what she believed. The morning her father died, the house felt strange even before the news came. Too quiet. Too heavy. When she entered the sitting room and saw people crying, she already knew something was wrong. "What is happening?" "Your father collapsed," someone said. By evening, he was gone. The burial brought crowds to the mansion, business partners, politicians, relatives, friends. Everyone praised him. Everyone spoke of his achievements. But when the visitors stopped coming and the house grew empty again, something shifted. Mrs. Williams became colder. Conversations turned sharp. Aaliyah felt watched. Ethan grew rude. Sonia avoided her completely. Even the household staff seemed unsure how to treat her. Aaliyah tried to convince herself that grief affects people differently. But the tension did not fade. It grew. Uncle Victor began visiting almost every day. He was her father's younger brother, always smiling, always reasonable. But now he spoke as if he already owned everything. He discussed company matters openly with Mrs. Williams and excluded Aaliyah entirely. Once, when Aaliyah tried to contribute during a discussion about the company, Uncle Victor laughed softly. "You are still young," he said. "Leave these matters to adults." Her father had never spoken to her that way. Slowly, Aaliyah began to feel like a stranger in her own home. Then came the day the will was read. They gathered at her father's lawyer's office in Maitama. Aaliyah expected the assets to be shared fairly. Her father believed in balance. In peace. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. At first, Aaliyah thought she had misunderstood. All company shares. All landed properties. All major investments and accounts. Left to her. Silence filled the room. Her mother's face tightened. Uncle Victor stopped smiling. Ethan stared at the table. Aaliyah's heart pounded. Not from excitement, but from confusion. Why would her father leave everything to her? Then she remembered his words from years ago. "One day when I am gone, You must protect what I built. Not everyone around you will clap when you succeed. At the time, she thought he was simply being cautious. Now she understood. The inheritance was not just wealth. It was a target. And tonight, she had overheard the price of owning it. The mansion alone was left to Mrs. Williams and her children. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Aaliyah slowly turned toward her mother, expecting shock, confusion, at least surprise. What she saw instead was anger. Deep, burning, dangerous anger. "This must be a mistake," Mrs. Williams said coldly. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Your husband made these changes shortly before his passing." No one looked at Aaliyah. On the drive home, the silence inside the car was heavier than grief. That night, the house felt hostile. Doors slammed. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Ethan refused to sit near her at dinner. "You think you've won?" Sonia muttered under her breath. "I didn't ask for this," Aaliyah replied quietly. But no one was listening anymore. After that, strange things began to happen. Her car failed to start without explanation. Food left in her room tasted bitter. Her wardrobe had clearly been searched. Important documents disappeared. Confusion slowly turned into fear. Still, she never imagined the truth was darker than her suspicions. Until the night she overheard them. Now, as Aaliyah ran through the silent streets of Abuja, her mother's words echoed inside her mind. "I planned everything from the beginning." What beginning? She did not stop running until she reached the only place she felt safe, her father's lawyer's house. When he opened the door and saw her trembling, barefoot and pale, he did not ask questions. He simply stepped aside and let her in. Hours later, seated in his quiet office, Aaliyah finally whispered, "They want me gone." The lawyer exhaled slowly, as if he had been expecting this day. "I was afraid it would come." "What do you mean?" she asked. He opened a drawer and brought out a sealed envelope. "Your father gave me this shortly before he passed," he said. "He instructed me to give it to you only when the time was right." Aaliyah's chest tightened. "What's inside?" He met her eyes. "The truth. And once you know it, your life will never be the same." The envelope felt heavier than paper should feel. For the first time in her life, Aaliyah felt doubt toward the people she had trusted completely. And one thought frightened her more than anything else. Maybe her father's death was not the beginning of her problems. Maybe it was the moment a secret buried for over 20 years was ready to surface. She did not open the envelope immediately. Her hands trembled as she stared at it on the table. Part of her wanted answers at once. Another part feared that whatever was inside would destroy the last fragile pieces of the life she believed in. The lawyer spoke gently. "Your father loved you deeply. Everything he did at the end was to protect you." "Protect her from who?" Slowly, she broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in her father's familiar handwriting. The moment she saw it, tears filled her eyes. She could almost hear his calm voice as she read. He apologized. He wrote that he had trusted the wrong people and discovered painful truths too late. He feared that after his death, Aaliyah would be in danger. And if she was reading the letter, it meant his fears had come true. The letter did not explain everything. Instead, it asked her to listen to the lawyer. The old man leaned back, as if the weight of years rested on his shoulders. "What I am about to tell you," he said softly, "is something your father confirmed shortly before he passed." Aaliyah nodded, her heart pounding. "Before Mrs. Williams entered your father's life, there was another woman. Her name was Lima. She was the woman your father truly loved. They planned to marry. And when she became pregnant, your father believed his future had finally begun." Aaliyah's breathing slowed. "But one day," the lawyer continued, "Lima disappeared. No explanation. No trace. Your father searched everywhere but found nothing. Eventually, heartbroken, he moved on. That was when he met the woman who later became Mrs. Williams. At first, It sounded like a tragic but ordinary story. Until the lawyer said quietly, "It was not a coincidence. It was planned." Aaliyah frowned. "Planned?" He nodded. "Mrs. Williams and your uncle Victor were already involved before she met your father. Victor believed his brother had everything: money, respect, success. He convinced Mrs. Williams that the only way to benefit was to enter your father's life strategically." Aaliyah felt the room grow colder. They planned their meeting. Even the accident that introduced them was arranged. Her heart pounded in her ears. Victor knew about Lima's pregnancy. He knew she was the only obstacle. Lima was taken away and hidden until she gave birth. After the baby was born, the child was taken from her. She was threatened and forced to leave the country. Aaliyah's lips trembled. "That child," the lawyer said gently, "was you." The world tilted. Everything inside her went silent. And yet, pieces of her life began aligning in painful clarity. The distance, the coldness, the feeling of never truly belonging. 2 months later, the lawyer continued, Mrs. Williams went into labor, but her baby was stillborn. That was when she executed the final part of the plan. You were brought home and presented as her child. Mr. Williams had been suspicious at first, the lawyer explained. But he trusted his wife. And the truth remained buried for years. Tears streamed down Aaliyah's face. "So, she's not my mother?" "No," he said gently. "Lima is your mother." The pain cut deeper than anger. But the truth was not finished. Before his death, Mr. Williams had begun noticing inconsistencies, documents that did not align, conversations that felt wrong. Eventually, an old maid confessed what she knew. That was when he discovered another betrayal. Ethan and Sonia were not his children. They were Victor's. The affair had never ended. Their children were part of a long-term plan to inherit everything. Aaliyah was never meant to benefit. As long as she lived, she was proof of deception. "That is why your father changed his will," the lawyer said softly. "He wanted you protected." Aaliyah sat in silence. For the first time, she understood their hatred. She was not the problem. She was the evidence. That night, Aaliyah made a decision. She would not fight people willing to kill for wealth. She would not sacrifice her peace to protect money. She walked away. She left the company, the properties, the inheritance. Many called her foolish. Some called her weak. But Aaliyah understood something they did not. Walking away is not always losing. Sometimes it is choosing peace. Starting over was painful. She rented a small office and built something from nothing. There were nights she cried quietly, remembering her father. Days she doubted herself. But pain taught her discipline. Discipline built strength. She followed the values her father had taught her: honesty, patience, hard work. Clients began to trust her. Opportunities followed naturally because she refused shortcuts. Within 2 years, her company became one of the fastest-growing firms in Abuja. Meanwhile, greed began destroying the family she left behind. Without wisdom or unity, Mrs. Williams and Victor argued constantly. Funds were mismanaged. Pride replaced strategy. Employees resigned. Contracts failed. The once powerful Williams empire slowly collapsed. Aaliyah learned something during that time. Wealth built on lies does not survive. One afternoon, her phone rang. It was the lawyer again. And the tone in his voice told her the story was not over yet. He handed her another letter from her father. This one was shorter, but heavier. In it, Mr. Williams apologized for not seeing the truth sooner. He wrote that love sometimes blinds the heart, but truth has a way of finding light, no matter how deeply it is buried. He warned her not to live with hatred. Hatred, he wrote, keeps a person chained to the past. At the end of the letter, he left words she would carry for the rest of her life. Success is not revenge. Peace is. Not long after, News arrived that shifted her world once again. Lima had returned to Nigeria. They agreed to meet in a small cafe, far from mansions, far from wealth, far from noise. No luxury, just truth. When Aaliyah saw her, she froze. Lima looked older. Time had carved pain into her eyes. But when she smiled, Aaliyah saw something undeniable, herself. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lima began to cry. Not softly, not politely, but like a mother who had mourned a living child for years. And in that moment, Aaliyah understood something profound. While one woman had stolen her childhood, another had spent decades grieving a daughter she never stopped loving. Healing did not happen in a day. It did not erase the past. But slowly, carefully, they began building something new. A relationship rooted in truth, not deception. Months later, the past came knocking. Mrs. Williams, Uncle Victor, Ethan, Sonia. They stood inside Aaliyah's office, stripped of arrogance. The once powerful Williams empire had collapsed under greed and poor decisions. Lawsuits surrounded them. Debts mounted. Reputation destroyed. They did not come with pride. They came with desperation. They begged for help. Aaliyah looked at them calmly. There was a time when their approval meant everything to her. A time when their rejection broke her heart. But life had taught her something greater. Not everyone who hurts you deserves your hatred. Sometimes, people must simply face the consequences of their own choices. She helped them, enough to survive, enough to prevent total ruin. But she never invited them back into her life. Forgiveness did not mean reopening wounds. Compassion did not require closeness. And peace did not require reconciliation. In the end, the family that planned her downfall lost everything to their own greed. And the girl they tried to erase became stronger, wiser, and free. Aaliyah finally understood her father's words. The greatest victory is not destroying those who hurt you. It is becoming someone their betrayal could not destroy. And that is the story of Aaliyah, a reminder that life may test us, but truth and patience always rise. This is Tales from African Folktales, where every story carries a lesson. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to African Folktales for more powerful stories of betrayal, destiny, justice, and the kind of wisdom only time can reveal.